record button, FYI.
Under more where it says ...
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's recording. I will go back to my presentation. So welcome everyone to this virtual community meeting to discuss NPA 2023-0018.02. My name is Maureen Meredith and I am the Plan Amendment Case Manager for the City of Austin Planning Department. As mentioned earlier, excuse me, if you haven't typed your name in the chat box already, please do that. Please mute your microphone if you're joining by phone as well. And if you can turn off your, if you could turn off your video, that might save some bandwidth. This meeting, as you know, is being recorded and it will be publicly posted to the publicinput.com/neighborhood plan amendment cases website. It'll be posted tomorrow morning. If you do not want your image viewed publicly, please turn off your camera. Kathleen Fox is the meeting facilitator tonight. She also is with the planning department. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the Plan Amendment Case Manager, and here's my contact information. Ricky Barba is the Zoning Case Manager, and he will not be attending the meeting tonight. The agenda I will go over basic case information, guidelines for group discussion, how to participate in this process, why is there a plan amendment application, what is a future land use map. I'll do a brief presentation outlining the applicant's request. Then Alice Glasgow, the applicant's agent, will do a presentation. Then we will open the meeting to the Q&A session. So the property addresses are 1911 2001 2003 2005 and 2007 West Koenig Lane, and 1902, 1904, and 1906 Ulrich Avenue. It's 1.6522 acres. The plan amendment case number is NPA 2023-0018.02. Project name is Koenig. The request is to change the future land use map from mixed use office and single family to multifamily residential. The associated zoning case number is C14 2023-0019. The proposed zoning change request is to change the property from LOMUNP, which is limited office district, mixed use combining district, neighborhood plan, and SF3NP, family residence district, neighborhood plan, to MF6NP, multifamily highest density district, neighborhood plan. The property owner applicant is GDC-NRG LLC. Adam Moore is the contact person, and the agent is Alice Glasgow from Alice Glasgow Consulting. Guidelines for group discussion. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat at any time during the meeting. Please postpone general comments during the Q&A session. After staff and applicant presentations, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand symbol on the menu bar. Telephone participants will be able to speak during the Q&A session of the meeting, and I will call out, or either myself or Kathleen will call out the last 4 digits of your phone number. Attendees will be muted upon arrival and through the staff and applicant presentations. Then staff will open the floor to answer questions in the chat or by attendees raising their hands to speak. Similar questions may be grouped and answered together. If you're having connection issues, please turn off your video until called upon to ask your question. And we ask that you be respectful to each other during this meeting discussion. Let's see, it looks like. So how to participate. Can you see this screen, how to participate in your process? There it goes.
Yes.
Okay. It looked like it had stalled. So as I mentioned, the meeting will be posted to the public input website link on the screen. If you have any emails, if you want to send me or the zoning case manager any questions, you can email or call us. If you provide written comments, we'll include it in the staff case reports. If you live within 500 feet of the property, you will get a notice in the mail of the date and the time of when the Planning Commission and City Council hearings are scheduled. They have not been scheduled at this time, and the notice will have instructions for how to participate. You can participate virtually and also attend the meetings in person. So why is there a plan amendment application? So neighborhood plans are adopted by City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. And city charter requires zoning changes to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Most neighborhood plan amendments are amendments to the plan's future land use map, also called a FLUM. And most neighborhood plan amendment applications have an associated zoning application. This map shows the areas in the city that have City Council approved neighborhood plans, and those are the areas shown in blue. All the plans have a plan document that have the vision and goals of the planning area, and most of which also have a future land use map. A future land use map have these colors that represent broad land uses. For example, on this property, you have mixed use office, which is the kind of maroon color, and also single family, which is represented in yellow. And the proposed land use is multifamily residential, which is shown in orange. So I'm just going to show you some general maps of the property. So this is an aerial photo that shows all the properties included in the plan amendment and the zoning application. A Google map that shows the surrounding uses. An aerial photo that has the future land use map overlaid, so you can see the properties that face Koenig Lane have that maroon color, which is the mixed use office. The properties to the south of those that have the mixed use office have the yellow land use, which is single family. And here's the zoning map on the property. Again, you can see the limited office mixed use zoning on the properties that face West Koenig Lane. And you can see the properties south of that with the SF3 Family Residence District zoning. This is a map from the city's comprehensive plan. This is the growth concept map. So these colors on the maps, or the circles and the blobs, represent regional centers, town centers, neighborhood centers, and also shows activity corridors. So this map sort of zooms into the property and shows where the property is in relation to those activity centers and corridors. So Burnett Road is designated as an activity corridor. You can see with the brown lines running down it. North Lamar is also an activity corridor, and you can see the property is to the west of the Crestview Station Town Center, and also to the west of the Highland Mall Station, which is there in orange. This shows, excuse me, the property and some of the surrounding public transportation. You have the Metro Rail running along Burnett Road. You have some bus routes around Koenig Lane and also along Woodrow. So that ends my presentation. I will stop sharing my screen and Alice can start hers.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this meeting that is being hosted by city staff. I'm Alice Glasgow, and I represent the owners and applicants for this rezoning and neighborhood plan amendment. As Maureen indicated, we are seeking to change the color of the map from the mixed-use office and single family to multifamily, and the zoning change is to MF6. The reason we're seeking MF6 is because MF6 allows us to accommodate the floor to area ratio that can accommodate 120 units. So because we are surrounded to the east and south of the property by single family use and zoning, that triggers compatibility standards, which limits your height limits the closer you are to the single family. So the MF6 zoning, while it allows a height of 90 feet, we cannot get to 190 feet because of the single family homes in proximity to the site. So the heights will be in compliance, 2 stories, 3 stories, and then we get closer to Koenig Lane. That's really where the height can go to 4 stories or 40 feet. So that's really all we have to offer, and we're glad to answer any questions or rather present to you.
If anybody wants to ask a question, you would raise your hand on the top. There's the raise your hand, or and I will call on you.
He's done with her presentation. It's 2 seconds.
Okay, we have Melissa Farber has a question.
Good evening, Alice. Thank you. If you could please repeat what you had said. I think you said 120 units, so it would be 40 feet.
Yeah, yes,
Well,
Melissa said the number of you.
Do you have a rendering? I have not. We have not been able to see a. I'm a neighbor of Ulrich. We have not been able to see a recent rendering.
No, we don't have a rendering because really site plans are not required at time of zoning. We just run the numbers and we have an idea that it's going to be 120 units.
120. And does that 120 units include parking, ma'am?
Yes, there will be underground parking. So there will be below grade parking that's underground parking. And then the actual building that's contemplated will be above grade, complying with the height setbacks that the city's compatibility standards call for.
And has your team done any type of flood review, given that that section of Ulrich is a very, very small section, and we tend to get rain coming down that towards Arroyo Seco? So are you required to assess any type of impact for drainage for the neighbors that are down farther down Ulrich?
Yeah, at the time of site plan, that's really when the city gets to review the project that is proposed with the site plan, and typically a detention pond is required. I'm assuming that if you're experiencing flooding now, it's because there are no detention ponds on
well,
sites
we don't have
any.
We don't have any of 120 units along our street at this moment. So
Correct.
Where would the detention pond be placed?
Well, typically for projects like this, it may be placed with in the garage. Under the garage, so it goes below grade, so that typically that's how that's constructed.
And
Melissa, there's 5 other people.
Wonderful.
Could I go back to you?
Yes,
and
please.
I'll get back to you so other people have the opportunity.
Thank you.
Could I have Chris Walter was next? Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, and thank you. Just out of curiosity, barring that all 120 are single bedrooms, how many projected residents would you see?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again, Mr. Walker?
Obviously, I don't have a lot of background, so running under the assumption that are they all single bedroom units, or is there going to be a mix of 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms?
There will be a mix of 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedroom units.
So then do you have a potential projection on the total number of residents, assuming max capacity?
No, I don't have a number of projected residents at this point, because you don't know how many people are going to rent 1 unit, so or you're assuming 3 bedrooms with some families.
Safe to say between 120 and 3.
And then I will be going to the chat too, reading the questions that are typed out after I get the hand raised people. Thank you, Chris. Vicki Wald is next.
Yes, thank you. Without the zoning change, how many units would you, I was trying to follow along, how many units would you be able to create without the zoning change?
Well, it just really depends on if one is, there are different tools that are available for development within the city. There is a tool called Affordability Unlocked, where you can build as much as you want without a zoning change. And that just requires a different financing tool. And sometimes it's difficult to get financing under that tool because of the higher threshold of affordable units that are required.
I'm going to go to Scott Thomas in the chat, excuse me, in the verbal, and then I will go to the chat and get 4 or 5 questions, and then I will go back to the verbal hand raising. So Scott Thomas is up next.
Yes, I'm actually Shell Thomas. I'm using his office desk because my
Okay.
office didn't. So, and I'm with the Capital School. I'm on the board. So I have 2 questions. The first one is on your application, Ms. Klosko, there was a number of proposed residential units of 120. However, you listed 81 bedrooms, 51 3-bedrooms, 42 bedrooms. I calculate that to be 171. So I would like to understand what the discrepancy of that is. And the second one would be under your application, you said you don't need a traffic report and you estimated like a 550, I can't find the exact number of daily cars leaving, which to me seems a little low when you have 171 proposed residential units. And those are my 2 questions, and I will silence my mic so you can answer those.
So I may have just messed up on my breakdown of number of bedrooms. It's 120 units. We have just
And you don't know the breakdown of it because you have 81, 42, 51, 3. That's a lot of 3-bedroom apartments, which is going to cause more traffic than what you estimated on your daily traffic count. So
no, the traffic counts, the city's traffic impact analysis is triggered if you have more than 400 units. So we're not at 400 units. So it's if it's 120 or 150, a traffic impact analysis is not triggered until you're over 400 units.
And does would your company be willing to do one for the sake of the neighborhood?
Well, you cannot prepare a traffic impact analysis unless the city requires you to. So at the time of site plan, once zoning is settled, the city has a new ordinance called the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan, which calls for a street impact fee and any other mitigation requirements the city finds necessary to trigger at the time of that site plan, depending on what kind of number of density they see at the time of that site plan. So zoning just merely gets you the idea of what can be built and how much. Everything else is triggered and required and assessed at the time of site plan.
I'm going to go to the chat questions now. Alice Glasgow did not have a PowerPoint presentation, so people are wondering, they said that they did not see a presentation. She did not have a presentation. The next question was answered. What are your plans to accommodate parking in all of your units? And Alice Glasgow said they will be underground. And somebody asks Alice that how many cars can be accommodated underground at this development?
With the parking space that are required by the city has an ordinance requires number of spaces depending on the number of bedrooms you have ultimately at the time of site plan.
And then but everything will be underground. Everything will be underground.
Yes, they will be underground because we cannot go up much higher because of the single family homes close by.
Okay, so several questions about parking. How many parking spaces are required per resident?
I believe it starts off with 1.5 per bedroom, and then it increases based on the number of units to 0.5 for additional units, if I recall correctly.
Another parking question. How do you plan, or excuse me, where do you plan to put the entrance to the parking garage? Which street?
The fire department requires that you have 2 entrance points. So there will have to be entrance from Koenig Lane and from Ulrich. Okay. For fire safety.
And then you did say that a traffic study was not required for this project, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Considering there is a preschool / elementary school directly across the street, how do you ensure the safety of the children? Will all residents be required to get a criminal / sexual offender background check as part of the application process? That's a new one.
I don't know that because I don't think the city does that kind of check. Whoever does that kind of checking, that's if it's state law requirement. I've never been asked that question before.
And I know there is a requirement if you are a sex offender, you're required to register with the municipality you are living, and I do know that. Please clarify another parking question. You already answered that. Another parking question, which you answered. What damage might be caused by nearby established building when you are digging down such a deep depth, and how would that digging and how long would the digging take? So digging of the building for the underground parking, how long is that projected to take?
We don't know yet simply because we're at the zoning stage, and after zoning, what typically happens that you have to submit civil engineering plans to the city, which could take up from 8 to 12 months to get approved. And then thereafter, you can begin construction. After that, the timeframes could be a year and a half before anything starts. So property owners will be notified when a site plan is submitted for development, and then you'll keep up with the timeline from thereafter.
How long do you project the building to take? What kind of construction traffic do you anticipate? And will construction traffic access the site through, and you answered the traffic, so it will be on both streets. So how long do you project the building construction to take, and what kind of construction traffic do you anticipate?
Well, we don't know that at this time. However, what I can tell you that at the time of site plan review, the Department of Public Works requires a traffic plan that indicates how traffic is going to flow in the area and onto the construction site. So there is a traffic mitigation plan that will be part of the site plan process.
Okay, I'm going back to the verbal questions. I'm going to people I haven't heard from. Jack Rainey is next. Jack Rainey. Do you have a question, sir?
Yes, I believe that one of my questions had already been answered, and that was how many parking spaces are going to be built into the parking area. I think she answered that if it's per code, 1.5, I think you responded 1.5 parking spaces per bedroom or per unit. Is that correct?
It's usually per bedroom.
Per bedroom. Okay. And it appears to me that it seems that the fact that we haven't had to have a traffic study performed, we really we can't get a handle on the safety issues and how, we already have through traffic coming through on these streets that are going to this Burnett Flats apartment complex. And adding this to it, it just seems that this could be moved forward without really getting a good handle on what the parking situation is. Many people that live in these residents they have cars on the street and are, according to the current process, we're supposed to go get parking permits if we want to have a car on the street for any of our guests. And I think if they're going to build 1.5 parking spaces per bedroom, maybe that negates that issue of parking on the street. But it seems to me that we're missing a vital piece of information if we can't get a traffic study done to ascertain the safety of traffic on these streets.
Well, as I indicated, that a traffic study is set by city code and what triggers, and it's 400 units or more, over 400 units is a trigger.
Okay, we're going on to Barbara MacArthur is next. Barbara MacArthur, you're next.
Hi, Alice. I'm sure you realize that that piece of property has a 40-foot conditional overlay on it on Koenig as part of the neighborhood plan. So no part of that property can ever be over 40 feet. And then the second thing I want to ask you, Alice, since in the past these people put in an affordability unlocked, if you gain your MF6 zoning and they redo the affordability unlock, that means that they would be able to build a 135-foot tall building on that property with no compatibility standards, so right up against people's houses, and it requires no parking except for handicap parking. And since these people have already filled out that paperwork before, I think that's quite a big ask.
So Barbara, my clients are not pursuing the affordability unlocked, but the affordability unlocked ordinance allows what you just described without a zoning change at all. So
no, it doesn't, because Alice, it doesn't allow 135 feet. Your zoning.
Where are you getting 135 feet? I've not seen a height of 135 feet because affordability unlocked only allows you to go up
90 feet. MF6
no.
is 90 feet.
Barbara, where are you getting 135 feet from?
Affordability unlock lets you go 1.5 times what your zoning is.
Right, your base zoning is, and
so if
we're not pursuing it. We're not pursuing affordability. If we were going to pursue affordability unlocked, we would not be filing a zoning application, because it just requires a different funding mechanism. You have to have financing to accommodate affordability unlocked, because 50% of the units have to be affordable. So we are not pursuing affordability unlocked.
So would you reassess the zoning you're requesting on Koenig Lane, knowing that there's a 40-foot height limit on those properties?
What do you mean reassess?
Well, you're asking for MF6 of 90 feet, but the property is not allowed to go over 40 feet for the Koenig properties?
Well, as I indicated, that we because of compatibility, at least based on the market rate product we're seeking, MF6 allows us additional FAR. Without affordability unlocked, we cannot waive compatibility. So we're trying to do a standard development that requires the MF6 zoning simply gives us additional FAR. But are you saying, are we willing to limit our height at 40 feet? Is that what you're asking?
Well, that's what the ordinance is right now. It's 40 feet.
Well, the rezoning would remove any conditional overlays that are with any zoning and let the regulations control.
No, it doesn't. It didn't on the Pearl.
It did not on the what?
The Pearl. It didn't on the street. It doesn't remove the conditional overlay, Alice.
Well, if it's being rezoned, unless it's repeated in the ordinance, that's typically how it works.
But no, the conditional overlay is part of the neighborhood plan. It goes for all the properties, no matter what their zoning is on Koenig.
Okay, well, why don't we let staff answer that? They can research that and let us know.
Yeah, I'll have
instead
to.
of have, I think why don't we defer to the zoning staff? We'll check. Maureen will check with the zoning staff and confirm that.
Okay.
How about that?
We're gonna go. That will go to the next question, and Maureen Meredith will research that. Greg Guest is next.
Hi, Alice. This is Greg. I have two simple, straightforward questions. The first is, do you agree or acknowledge that the primary motivation for the land use changes that you and your client are seeking is to increase the development potential higher floor to area ratios, greater square footage, increased height, and so forth, that and the associated economic benefits to the developer or the property owner. Is that the primary motivation?
Well, our primary motivation is to seek zoning that accommodates the floor to area ratio that can be accommodated here on this site for development. I think.
Is it? But it's not. Is the rationale behind that for economic benefit to the property owner and the interested parties?
I think we're just trying to provide housing that is needed in the city of Austin.
So there's no economic motivation for you or the property owner developer. Is that accurate?
What do you mean economic motivation is?
I'm trying to get to the rationale behind.
The rationale is to get appropriate zoning that accommodates the housing that is contemplated on the site.
And why is that being sought?
Because that's what the regulations require to
No.
Go above it.
Why is development being entertained at all?
Well, I think I've answered that question.
Yes, yeah, it's been answered.
All right. Then
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. I'm going to go to Scott. Scott Thomas is next, please. Thank you, Greg. Scott Thomas.
Yes, again, I'm using my husband's
Yeah.
computer. This is Cheryl Thomas. Ms. Glasgow, I just in the application that's required on behalf of your client from the was it Gilbin Development based out of Rhode Island? You have to say justification for the plan amendment and rezoning. And if I understand correctly, MF6 is the largest, in the biggest zoning that is allowed for multifamily as opposed to like MF3 or something. I don't have it off the bat. I haven't done zoning in quite a while, but you do two land use goals. Use goal number 3, encourage a mixture of compatibility and appropriately scaled business and residential land uses in the neighborhood, and mixed use development on major corridors to enhance the diversity. And 2, the second goal used to justify why your client wants this is land use goal number 6, improve affordability of home ownership and rental properties. So I would like to just open up the door a little bit to see why you think an MF6 is appropriate really for that area that is so close to so many SF1s.
Well, first of all, Koenig Lane is classified under the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan as a level 3 roadway, which is going to calls for 80 feet of right-of-way, 80. So it's designated as a major corridor with property owners along Koenig Lane to dedicate right-of-way from both sides of the street to have the roadway that is 80 feet wide. So given the classification of a level 3, it's an activity corridor that the zoning would be appropriate there. It's same zoning that is down the street from the Pearl property that used to be the former First Texas Honda property.
All right, so that was a nice, that was a good answer to one of my questions, because I didn't know it was designated. Koenig was designated for a level 3 for that much. Is there any plans? This might be a city question. I mean, I know how tight it is when I drive that area. I just didn't know if it was going to get wider, because that would mean either your property would have to donate some of this right away to the city to accommodate that major corridor for the city of Austin.
Yeah, Cheryl. Yeah, Cheryl, you are correct that the pavement right now, the pavement width is 38 feet. That's why it's narrow. But the plan the city council approved about 2 years ago that is called the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan calls for 80 feet of right-of-way, 80. The existing right-of-way that is there currently is 71 feet of right-of-way. So property owners, like when we go seek rezoning or the time of site plan, we will be required to dedicate some right of way along our property and any other properties along Koenig Lane as they go in with redevelopment, they'll be required to dedicate right of way and traffic impact, not a traffic impact, a street impact fee is also assessed at that time to accommodate this future expansion of the roadway. It's going to be widened at some point.
All right, thank you for that question. And if you could just address how the land use goal number 6, improve affordability of homeownership and rental properties. If you know how your company will do that.
hold on, everybody. It's I know a lot of you are asking 3-4 questions at a time. Let's share our time and share between the participants. I'm going to, and also if people have raised their hand and had their questions answered, please put your hand down. And again, 1 or 2 questions per person, not 3 or 4 questions. That would be appreciated. I'm going to let you ask one more question because I just put that rule out there. You can ask one more question and then I'm going to go on to somebody else. Thank you.
No, my question was just her, for Ms. Glasgow, just to answer, in her application, she did 2 land use goals of why this justifies the rezoning. Land use goal number 3 and land use goal number 6. She did answer the one for number 3. I'm just curious what the justification for land use goal number 6 was. What the belief is in there, which was rental properties.
With every goal I cited, I gave a reason and justification for each of those goals that are selected. Those are goals that are from the neighborhood plan, and the point is to line up your request with how it closely approximates the stated goal and objective. And with additional housing, it just provides a variety of housing, and that's the justification I have for seeking the plan amendment to multifamily.
Thank you.
And did 2032 have a question? I noticed occasionally their check would be up. Did you have the call ending with 2032? Did you have a question? Okay, no. We're going to go, Scott Thomas is next. Scott Thomas, did you have a question?
No, this is Cheryl Thomas, like I said.
Okay,
Glasgow has been very
okay.
Thoughtful on her questions, answering questions to me.
Okay, and then could you put your hand down? Thank you so much. And now we're back to Vicki Vold.
Thank you. I know this topic has been hit, but I want to try to ask it a different way. So my husband and I live right off of Adams Avenue, heavy traffic coming through, no sidewalks. And when I listen to the number of units projected, but without number of residents that would be coming through, as well as estimated cars, I'm new to understanding the process and want to know at what point, at what stage will you have a projection of the number of people and number of cars? That's one. And then the second question is, there's a lot of people asking, how can a traffic study being done, how could a traffic study being done, even though the city doesn't require it at this stage? I just came through the school where the school was getting let out today, and it was already lots of people there, and I can't imagine more cars coming through without some issues. Hopefully, safety is paramount to everybody doing this.
Well, to answer your question, Vicki, at the time of site plan, the Transportation and Public Works Department will tell us what mitigations need to be.
I don't know what that stage is, though.
After the zoning, before construction can begin. After zoning is just a process that obviously there's no guarantee that you'll get it. So that's why
At that point, it's far down the path, though, correct?
No, it's not. It's not. That is the time where you get to see exactly what is going to be built as far as the building, the parking, the setbacks, the open space, and there will be the transportation staff will also have comments about, and you can see all of that online because you will receive notice. If you receive notice tonight for this hearing, you will receive notice when an actual site plan for development is submitted, so you can see exactly what is being required and what improvements or what mitigation the city transportation department is going to be requiring, including paying of street impact fees at that time. In fact, the transportation staff with the zoning comments, when the staff report is ready, it will indicate that all this information and the mitigation will be required when a plan for development is submitted, because zoning is not a plan for development.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so-
I'm going to go to Greg, and then I'm going to go to the chat after Greg. So Greg Guest can verbally ask his question.
Thank you. Alice, do you, in your professional opinion, do you believe that your client, the developer, could build a viable apartment multifamily community on the 5 lots that front Koenig that are currently zoned commercially? This project has, as you well know, 5 lots that front on a commercial corridor, Koenig Lane, but 3 lots that are single family within the neighborhood on Ulrich. Do you professionally believe that your client could build a viable multifamily development on the 5 lots that front on Koenig Lane? Thank you.
The application includes the lots to the south also on Ulrich Lane, so the project is viable with additional lots to the south that are part of the rezoning.
I understand that, but that wasn't my question.
Oh, I apologize if that wasn't your question. We cannot build the same project with just the lots in front. It would be, there can be some development, obviously. It would just be not with a parking garage. So it's just, you take a different, either just keep the lots that way. So to cost of something completely different.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going back to the chat questions. Somebody asked about parking again. Will there be parking for all units? Alice Glasgow said yes. Is it 1 parking space per bedroom? No, it's 1.5. Onto what street does the parking exit? Alice already answered that question. It will go on 2 streets. Next question, what drainage might be caused to the nearby established buildings when you're digging down a deep depth? I think you answered that. And how would that digging take? You answered that question. Let's see. Is it not reasonable to proactively perform a traffic study as part of a drastic change in zoning? Do you have anything else to add to what you said, Alice, that
No.
if the city requires, if it's over 400, you don't have any, okay. Could a valid petition be used to ask for a traffic study despite this project not being 400 units plus? I have no idea. Do you know that, Maureen?
Yeah, no, I don't
Could
think
have,
of, I mean, I guess it would, I don't think the zoning petition could trigger, I'm not sure if I'm understanding it correctly, but I mean, it might be something the neighborhood can work with the applicant on. But
They can ask,
petition-
Maureen, they can ask the Transportation and Public Works Department. They're set up to, they can do a study themselves. So if they're directed by council to do a study, they can do it with council direction. The city
Yeah,
staff
but
can do it.
yeah, I was just saying it's not related to the zoning petition. I just didn't want to say
Correct,
that
that you can, yeah,
zoning
that's correct.
petition
that
would trigger that. So, but I can, I mean, communicate with the zoning planner, and I see there's some other questions about as I scroll down, does the city need answers to make the best decision on whether to grant the zoning change? So the zoning planners will get input from various departments, the transportation department, and when the zoning planners meet to make a recommendation, I'll report back to them this conversation, the questions and concerns. So it'll all be part of their process when they make a recommendation.
I had another question. Is this project being subsidized by the City of Austin's Affordable Housing Program?
No.
Okay. What % of affordable housing would you have? You just said you were not pursuing affordability unlocked because it was not 50%.
We're not pursuing that, and the zoning we're seeking does not require affordable units.
It seems there are no answers being provided by the developers. Without some of these answers, how can the city make a change? And how can the residents and those impacted know how they will be impacted? Do you have a response to that?
Well, zoning is supposed to be looked at with the lens of, is the zoning being sought appropriate or not appropriate? So I believe it's appropriate, given what is in the area, given the zoning pattern in the neighborhood. You have MF6 zoning, not too far from this side. The Pearl multifamily is zoned MF6, and it seems to be functioning well, at least from what I see each time I drive by. So it's just the zoning adds to the city's need for housing needs. So I believe that it's appropriate.
Next question, it's regarding sidewalks. Children walk home from Lamar along Ulrich. In addition to the school at the corner of Koenig and Ulrich, are you required to build sidewalks? Is the developer not concerned about the impact of the existing residents?
Will be required to provide sidewalks, yes. On our portion of the property, not along other folks' properties, just
right.
Along the boundaries of our properties.
And is the developer not concerned about the impact to existing residents?
Of course they are concerned. They'll do everything possible to minimize impacts to the residents and their neighbors.
Next question. You said you would not require background/sex offender checks as part of your application process because it was not required. Do you foresee any protection for the young children with communication impairments across the street? Has the developer thought about this at all? Before Alice answers this question, Alice Glasgow is not the developer. She's an agent that was hired by the developer and she's representing the developer. So Alice has been hired as an agent to represent the developer. I just want to put that out there. Alice, do you have anything about this?
I will check with my client, the developer, to find out how they handle this on other projects that they have or built regarding that question.
So again, it's about sex offenders and children with communication impairments across the street. And has the developer thought about that? Okay. Is the developer willing to perform a traffic study even if it's not required? You've answered that question several times. Doesn't the city need these answers to make the best decision on whether to grant the zoning change or not? I think you answered that before. Do you have anything to add to that, Alice?
No.
Can homeowners formally oppose and or object a zoning change? Maureen?
Yeah, I have a email that I send to people that kind of walks people through the process as far as like if they want to oppose something like the zoning petition, you need to, my email will have a link to it, but you can also Google City of Austin zoning petition. You can also, when the cases are scheduled for planning commission, city council, you can sign up to speak, work with the planning contact team, any neighborhood association, anybody who lives within 500 feet. If you want to send me your comments, I can add them to the staff case report, but I do have an email that kind of walks people through that process. And at the end of the meeting, I'll put my email back up, but my email is also in that the community meeting notice. You can email me and I'll email you that little email that I've created that kind of walks people through the process. But yes, there's a way you can oppose the plan amendment and zoning change requests.
We probably have only time for a couple more questions, Alice.
But the meeting is till 7:30, Kathleen.
Oh, 7:30. Okay, then we have plenty of time. It seems this type of zoning would be appropriate on Burnett, not Koenig. Any response, Ms. Glasgow?
Well, hold on, let me show this map so they can see where the folks who are not. You can see this, you see there's MF6 right here.
Mm-hmm.
On Koenig Lane. We are right here with this blue, right here. This is our property. This is Koenig Lane. This is all MF6, all fronting onto Koenig Lane at Woodrow, well, right here, this other street is Grover Avenue and Burnett Road. On Koenig Lane, rather. You guys see that? Kathleen, can you see that?
I can see that, yes.
Yeah,
You
we can
can?
see your
Okay.
map.
Another question. Does the city of Austin have a plan in place on how it plans to acquire the additional 40-foot right-of-way needed?
Yes, they do. That's
Needed
Kathleen,
for all Koenig since it is now a class 3 corridor. I think you already discussed that, did you?
correct.
Okay. Let's see, the developer is here in the meeting, Adam Moore. Perhaps he would like to respond to some of these questions.
Yes, good evening. This is Adam, and I do appreciate, everybody's time here. And I have been actually listening to all these questions, and you guys have been bringing up a lot of very good questions. And at this point, we are going through just a rezone. We haven't dived deep into any of the design or any of the true detail of the questions that you guys are asking. However, it would be good, we are actually writing down some of these questions, and there will be follow-ups to where we can hopefully address these as we get further along this. But at this time, we don't have all of those answers. I do hear, the major concerns of the TIA. However, we also, as a developer, have to follow the city's codes and regs. So when it comes to those type of things, we'll get back with the city and we'll discuss those, with them and see what we can do to help provide the additional, information. But I think, several of these questions are very good questions. We are concerned about the school next door. We are concerned about the impact that we have on the other single family homes. So, we'll take into consideration all of those as the planning and the design gets further along. But at this point, we're trying to see whether we can have the actual rezone approved in order to build the project that we need to approve and build for the city of Austin's needs. Thank you.
Has the city considered in its required planning for heavy equipment entering and leaving the site during construction?
This will be all addressed at time of site plan. Zoning, again, is just really, I think, the same answer given, that this is the order of process, zoning first and everything else comes at more detailed when the plan is submitted to all city departments for review.
Are the parents of children that attend Capital School of Austin allowed to oppose the zoning change?
Yes, so like I said, we can they can submit any recommendations to me and Ricky Barba. We can add them to the staff case report. So yeah, my contact information is in the notice, and I'll put it again at the end of the presentation. I'll go ahead and do it now.
Okay. Old properties are zoned single family for a reason. Multifamily zoning on Koenig may be justifiable, but not on Ulrich. Why is commercial zoning appropriate on a residential street where all adjoining lots are zoned single family?
Well, we're not changing the Ulrich to commercial. We're changing it to multifamily.
I think some people think multifamily is commercial zoning because it's for rent rather than owner occupied, perhaps.
It's still residential.
Yes. I'm going back to people. Let's see, Barbara MacArthur, do you have a question?
Yes, Alice, the development of the Pearl and of the Dart Bowl is about 7 acres of land that was a car dealership and a bowling alley. It involved no infiltration of single family homes in the neighborhood. And it's a much bigger property, and it's a very different property. And they've stuck to the 40-foot height. And even though they followed a lot of rules, they reduced their impervious cover to 70% because of the flooding. The neighborhood has still experienced much more flooding than existed there in the past. So these are not equivalent projects. One of them, and besides the fact, the Pearl has access to Grover and Koenig. Grover is a very wide street there. You're a block off of Burnett and Koenig, which is a terrible intersection. So they're very, very different projects.
So that was Barbara MacArthur. We're going to go to right, that was Barbara. If you put your hand down, if you just had your question answered, we're going to now Melissa Farber has a question.
My question is again about the heavy vehicles. Having lived on Ulrich for about 11 years and raised my son going to Lamar, we lived through the building of the Burnett Flats, and there were large construction vehicles probably for about 2 years driving up and down a very, very narrow stretch, turning on to clay. What has the developer, or have you, Ms. Glasgow, thought that the potential impact when you have been envisioning what this project would look like of those vehicles? I understand that right now it's just a zone, but if the zone is changed, then the view is that you will be able to proceed with building. So my concern really is for the safety of the individuals on the existing section of Ulrich, pardon.
Well, all developers want safety for everyone who lives in a particular area. And as I stated earlier, the City of Austin's Public Works Department at the time of site plan will want to see a traffic plan that shows how traffic is going to be moved in and out of the site to make sure that the area is not impacted adversely.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm going back to the chat. Let's see. Let's see here. Has a traffic study been performed for Koenig Road from Burnett Road to Woodrow Street? Considering one of the entrances to the project is on Koenig, the traffic count on Koenig meets the requirement for a traffic study to be required.
Traffic study is triggered by the number of units that are proposed on a particular project, not the traffic that is going up and down the street. That's how the city code is structured.
Restated, why is multifamily zoning appropriate on a residential street where all for many blocks inside the neighborhood are zoned single family? Thank you, Greg.
Multifamily is also residential zoning. It's just a different category of residential.
Next question. Agree that the intersection of Koenig and Laird is very congested, even with 70 students showing up for school and private cars for drop off and pick up twice a day. We even had cars backed up on Koenig. A traffic study sees paramount before this zoning change even occurs. That's more of a statement rather than a question. Do you have anything to say to that, Alice?
No. I've already answered that question many times in different ways, Kathleen.
Yes, I know. Does the plan include windows and or patios on the second story and higher that face Capitol School? I have strong concerns about the safety implications this might pose. So patios and windows are this, Natalie Kane thinks patios and windows higher facing Capitol School are concerned for safety. Do you have any response to that, Alice? I don't understand the question.
Yeah, well, this is like I say, design will occur later and design will be dictated. People have to have windows. You can't have buildings without windows.
I guess they're thinking people are going to be sitting on the patio looking at children, but then
that can occur today. The property can be developed today with residential development facing them. So seeking a zoning change does not, the current zoning allows development, it allows residential, allows commercial. So I don't know that you can dictate where windows or patios face, that you can't have people sitting in their backyard or facing a particular place.
And she just clarified that there are children and they could be observed from, i.e. the windows and the patios.
Okay, understood.
Greg says, if multifamily zoning as a residential zoning is essentially equivalent to single family, as asserted in this discussion, should all single family zoning throughout the city of Austin include an allowance of multifamily development?
Well, that's why this is a process that requires public hearings and discussion. So there is no prohibition against seeking a change. This is a process that is available for property owners to use.
And I don't think Alice said multifamily is equivalent to single family. She said multifamily is a type of residential. So it's for people living in the neighborhood. And yes, it is different than single family, but they're all residential. So to clarify, let's see, I'm going to go back to people. Scott Thomas again, which is somebody else with a different name.
Yeah, Cheryl Thomas. My husband forgets my name sometimes, so that's okay. So I'm just curious because Ms. Glasgow, you've always you referenced what's happening at the Pearl, the development further down on the street. And if that was correct, well, what did the speakers did say that that didn't require zoning change for any single family 1 to multifamily 6. I wasn't here, so I don't know if that's true. But my question to you is, 1, if you know if that's true or not, and 2, is there something that you are aware of in this area that is equivalent where there's multifamily 6 zoning so close to a single family 1 like this, like what literally would abut housing like this?
Yes, the one on the Pearl project, and I showed you on the map about single family zoning. I'll show you the map so you can just see the map yourself. So you see that, the yellow here? That is single family right here. This is the Pearl. This is all the single family zoning here. You have multifamily, this MF3, but you have all the single family. The yellow is all single family.
And for your knowledge, do you think that MF6, when it was changed, was from just a general commercial zoning? Do you know anything about
It was
that
mixed use.
zoning?
It was zoned commercial mixed use. Just like the zone, we have office mixed use. They have mixed use, just like
But it was more of
we
a
have
commercial as opposed to.
a higher category of commercial, a different commercial,
Okay, thank
but
you.
with mixed use.
Thank you.
I'm going back to the chat. Okay. Regarding windows and patios, you mentioned no sexual offender screenings, and our vulnerable children would be in full view. In today's times, we unfortunately must also consider the rising incidence of school shootings. Would the developer be willing to consider these concerns in their designs?
We're taking notes on that. We'll
Thank you.
keep that in mind.
Okay. I'm going back to questions. Miss Scott, you've already answered. Do you still have another question, Miss Scott? Your hand is okay.
No, I keep lowering it and it keeps raising it. So
Okay.
I'm gonna have to be creative and make up something then. No,
okay. So we are at 7:12. Does anybody have any further questions of Miss Glasgow and the developer who is here? Speak now or forever hold your peace. There are quite a few questions. I've done many of these, and it's probably the most questions I've ever had at a neighborhood planning meeting. You did a great job, Alice.
Well, you did a great job of facilitating the meeting. Thank you for your facilitation.
I spoke too soon. We have another question from David Hobson.
Yeah, hey, just in case you guys aren't reading the room, this audience is largely opposed to the idea of this development. Has there been any thought given to something other than a MF6 that would be possible at this site? I think myself and other residents along this area would be interested in hearing if there's a different path that could be taken that would face less opposition from the community. Is there any interest with the developer to engage in that sort of dialogue?
Was that David or Dan?
David.
David,
and this is really a question for the developer, not for you.
Okay.
Yeah, David, thank you for that. So yeah, I think, we'll need to go back and we need to actually look to see if there's any other zoning options that we could do to make this project work. So
I mean, just so you understand, so the contact team has voted against.
There are a lot of neighbors.
Yeah, I was going to say the contact team who receives and votes on FLUM changes has voted to not approve this. That means that this group, I believe, can override our negative vote, and then it would need to go to the council and it would face opposition there, we would likely, attempt to block this development. Rather than go down that path and waste your time, we'd be interested in having a dialogue, I think, about what could potentially be built there as opposed to MF6, which is, in our opinion, the worst possible outcome.
Okay.
David,
Yeah, I
you
mean, I
know,
think it's something that we need to definitely go back and we can kind of look at. I can't say there is something else that is going to work for us, but we can always go back and take a look at it.
David,
So
do you have
David,
thoughts or suggestions?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can tell you that we're all feeling a very strong knee-jerk reaction to the size, the scope, the amount of traffic, all the rest of it that would impact our neighborhood, which is a small family neighborhood. Lots of people walking the streets, as you've heard, children walking to and from school. It just doesn't feel like an appropriate use of the land, to summarize what I think the general comments here are. We understand development's coming. I think this neighborhood gets that, and we just want to figure out how do we move forward in a way that most appropriately suits the spaces we have. This does not seem like the most appropriate use. So it's a question of, do you want to collaborate with the neighborhood, or do you want to try to push things through without our support?
Well, we want to collaborate, so we are asking you to also think of what is appropriate in your mind. I think if you're able to, not tonight, don't have to answer it right now. I'm just suggesting that you can ponder that and let us know, suggest what you think might be appropriate, because clearly what we've applied for doesn't seem to be acceptable, but also keep in mind that
given that acknowledgement that this does not seem to be acceptable to the neighborhood, would you guys withdraw this application, work with the neighborhood on something we would deem to be more acceptable, and try to proceed with that?
I don't think withdrawing it is the answer. You can still work and collaborate while the case is still active.
I hope the planning committee here is listening to what the neighborhood is saying, that we feel like this is a inappropriate use of the land, and we'd like to see, we understand something will be done. We just would like to see something other than this. That's all I've got to say. If we want to pursue this offline, okay. Adam and team, you guys can track us down. Everybody's been receiving mails and emails. I'm sure that you all can find us. We're all on the street. We're all on Ulrich and Adams and the nearby streets.
I have another question in the
Sure.
chat.
Thank you.
I have another question in the chat. What is the next step? Will this be presented to the city now for approval?
About the timeline, because you're doing the application right now and it has to go through the P&Z before it goes to the council. What is the timeline on the city on when you think you're going to propose this to the very beginning on the P&Z commission?
So this is Maureen here. So like I said, it has not been scheduled for Planning Commission, City Council. We don't have any prospective dates. We don't even have a staff recommendation at this time. Based on the conversation I'm hearing as far as Alice and Adam wanting to work with the neighborhood, I'll probably just wait until I hear a follow-up as far as how those discussions are going before we start moving forward with any dates. Did that answer the question, Cheryl?
Unfortunately, somehow I missed it. I got muted, or I had an internet problem. So what I heard basically was that you do not have any dates at this point. So it's not like you're planning on doing it in 3 months. You don't have anything at this point.
Based on the conversation as far as Alice and Adam willing to work with the neighborhood and the planning contact team, I'm gonna wait until I hear from y'all about any negotiations that have moved forward. So no, I don't have any dates and we don't have a staff recommendation. So I'm going to wait until I hear back from y'all and how those meetings go.
All right, I appreciate that.
So back to David, are you in part of the neighborhood plan contact team? Did you attend the meeting in which? Okay.
I'm part of it. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll reach out to them. to the chair and have a follow-up meeting so we can all have a follow-up chat.
There's
Okay.
another comment in the chat. This project will change the character of this family-oriented housing neighborhood. Traffic issues have not been addressed sufficiently to provide traffic safety during construction and after the project is completed. Anybody want to respond to that?
Kathleen, that question I think has been asked several times and answered
Okay.
different ways.
Next question. I firmly believe commercial and MF is typically considered commercial in general real estate terms. Traffic access onto Ulrich and MF zoning for Ulrich lots is wholly unacceptable. Nonetheless, thank you, Maureen, Alice, and Adam.
Thank you.
So we have about 9 minutes left. There's no more questions. We can go ahead and end the meeting, unless y'all have any last minute questions for me or Kathleen.
This is Melissa Farber. I believe we can submit a written statement as well via email to you, Maureen or Kathleen.
Yes, yeah.
Wonderful.
You would submit it to Maureen Meredith, who is the neighborhood
manager,
plan
yeah.
case manager, or the
Wonderful.
zoning case manager, if you wish.
And then Maureen, you'll review all of the comments that the neighbors have posted here, and that will be taken into account in your deliberations.
Yes, so eventually at the point when my plan amendment inclusive planning team meet and we look at the request to change the future land use map. So we don't look at the zoning, we look at the future land use map. Kathleen and I will report back to our team what we heard in the meeting. If you want to send me emails, we can reference those as well. We'll look at the plan, we'll look at the comprehensive plan, we'll look at the overall city goals, and we will make a recommendation on the flum change. And then we send that recommendation to the zoning team. We'll write our rationale. The zoning team will meet and then they'll make a recommendation on the zoning request. So that I don't know what that timeline is at this point.
Thank you, Maureen, very much. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Ms. Glasgow and Mr. Moore.
Well, thank you for attending the meeting tonight. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for attending the meeting.
And I want to thank everybody for being respectful. And I think we thoroughly hit many of the bases many times. And thank you for attending this meeting.
This was a very good meeting. I think we had a lot of good questions. And like Kathleen said, it was a very respectful meeting considering how many people were in here and people got a lot of good questions in. So thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you. And good night.
Good night.
And you'll turn off the recorder, Maureen?
Yeah, let me stop recording.